Forget the commonly known images of pyramids and mummies. The true startling secret of ancient Egypt lies not in tombs but rather in the open air of their majestic temples. For 3,000 years, the Egyptians built a civilization grounded in a conception of creation and fertility so radical it continues to baffle and astonish us today. At the heart of their most revered creation narrative was not a divine utterance but an act of cosmic self-creation. Pharaohs, revered as living deities, were expected to marry their siblings to preserve the sanctity of their bloodlines. Their public festivals weren't characterized by solemnity. Instead, they were grand, exuberant celebrations of life and procreation led by priests of the perpetually aroused fertility god Min. Remarkably, these beliefs were not the whims of a fringe cult or esoteric doctrine. This was the very fabric of mainstream Egyptian religion and daily existence for over 3 millennia. In stark contrast to other ancient civilizations that emphasized modesty and shame, the Egyptians celebrated fertility and creation publicly and vibrantly. There was no designated term for virginity in their lexicon. Women were granted freedoms that would not be realized again for thousands of years, and their understanding of human anatomy and birth control outpaced that of European practitioners until the 1800s. As we delve into the remarkable world of ancient Egypt, we uncover how this immensely successful civilization placed the act of creation at the core of their worldview and why contemporary society may have misunderstood the depth of their understanding. Let's begin with an extraordinary creation story you have probably never heard. The ancient Egyptians did not start their narrative with Adam and Eve, nor did they subscribe to the notion of the Big Bang. Instead, they believed that the universe originated from divine self-generation, and this was not some obscure myth concealed within ancient scrolls. It was the official narrative etched in stone, publicly taught within temple walls, celebrated during festivals, and literally carved into the edifices of the pyramids. According to this creation myth, the god Adam floated in solitude within the primordial chaos. Without companionship, he turned to his own divine power, generating existence from within himself. This singular act brought forth the first gods, the first humans, and ultimately laid the foundation for a civilization that would enshrine creation as a religious pillar. Rather than perceiving this act as base or shameful, the Egyptians revered it as the holiest of acts. The Heliopolitan creation myth, preserved in the pyramid texts dating back to 2400 BCE, offers explicit details on how Adam enacted this first creative act. Depicted in these hieroglyphic texts is Adam as the self-created deity who birthed Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture, from himself. This depiction was more than mere metaphor. The ancient Egyptian language included precise terms for self-generation, terms that were used with great intention in their religious discourse. The coffin texts from the Middle Kingdom period provide even clearer descriptions, illustrating how Adam took hold of his creative power and initiated the first divine act, a profound moment that sparked the elegance of creation. This sacred act became so esteemed that the title of God's hand emerged as one of the highest honors a woman could attain in ancient Egypt. Queens and high priestesses of the New Kingdom proudly adopted this title, fully aware that they symbolically represented the divine creative force behind the genesis of the universe. Queen Hatshepsut, perhaps the most formidable of Egypt's female pharaohs, explicitly claimed this title, engraving it upon her mortuary temple. Imagine if contemporary religious leaders had titles directly referencing the creation story. This demonstrates the level of widely accepted understanding in ancient Egyptian society. Temple walls throughout ancient Egypt openly depicted this creation scene. The Temple of Karnak, a site visited by millions, features reliefs showcasing Adam engaging in self-creation, while the Temple of Dendera celebrates the moment of divine creation in a dedicated chapel. Far from being hidden away in secret chambers, these depictions were prominently displayed for worshippers to encounter during religious ceremonies. Unfortunately, modern tour guides often overlook these significant explanations, yet the ancient Egyptians sought to ensure that everyone comprehended how their universe came into being. This creation myth profoundly influenced Egyptian conceptions of life for millennia. If the supreme god initiated existence through self-generation, then human creativity and fertility were neither shameful nor sinful, they were divinely inspired. The annual flooding of the Nile, fundamental to the survival of Egyptian civilization, was perceived as a manifestation of divine creative force nourishing the land. The life-giving waters were viewed as blessings imbued with abundance for the Egyptian people. Priests enacted rituals mirroring Adam's creative act to ensure the floods would arrive on schedule. The archaeological evidence surrounding these beliefs is robust. In 2007, researchers uncovered a papyrus in the Turin Museum that had long been misinterpreted. Once accurately translated, it revealed detailed descriptions of a religious ritual involving priests simulating the creative act while chanting hymns of creation. Furthermore, the Brooklyn Museum houses a statue from the late period depicting a priest reverently participating in the act of creation, a clear testament that these ideas were not mere abstractions but were indeed ingrained in practiced religion. Why did the ancient Egyptians develop this distinctive creation narrative? The answer reveals their profound understanding of biology and their observations of nature. They recognized that life emerges from bodily generation, that creation begets new life, and that the flooding of the Nile yields bountiful crops. For a civilization that was entirely reliant on the Nile's annual inundation, the interconnections between these life-giving forces and creation were both logical and essential. Unlike the Mesopotamian myths characterized by violent struggles among gods or the Hebrew account wherein divine speech manifests light, the Egyptians focused directly on the biological essence of creation. The implications of this foundational myth were far-reaching. Women were not relegated to passive roles, as seen in Greek thought, but were actively engaged in the divine creative process, representing the very force of creation itself. Self-generation was not taboo, but instead a sacred echo of the universe's initial divine act. Temple practices throughout the ancient Near East took on significant religious meaning as reenactments of divine creativity. The entire Egyptian framework of gender, reproduction, and religious obligation arose from this primordial scene of creation. Additionally, this influence extended to spheres like medicine and science. The Kahun gynecological papyrus, dating back to 1800 BC, showcases an impressive understanding of human reproduction that likely originated from religious inquiries into divine creation. Egyptian doctors grasped the links between conception and generation well before contemporary civilizations, developing some of the earliest fertility treatments derived from these sacred principles. Initial translations of these texts by modern Egyptologists often sanitized the more explicit references, with Victorian scholars like E. A. Wallace Budge choosing to leave certain parts in hieroglyphics or replace them with euphemisms. Accurate translations only became publicly accessible after the social revolutions of the 1960s. And even now, many exhibitions cloak these aspects of Egyptian religion, presenting a softened version of a culture that would have perplexed its ancient observers. Consider the reactions of today's society if religious teachings included the concept of divine self-generation as a means of creation. Many parents would be shocked at the idea. However, for the ancient Egyptians, this understanding was not scandalous, it was considered sacred. While we often obfuscate discussions of creation behind delicate language, they boldly immortalized it on temple walls. And speaking of temples, let us explore the god revered as the embodiment of fertility, Min. If Adam's narrative was surprising, the festivals devoted to Min promise to astonish you. Unlike Adam, who existed in isolation within the cosmic void, Min thrived within bustling Egyptian cities, where his worship involved public displays that would appear rather daring by today's standards. Min was not a minor deity lurking in the obscurity of the pantheon. He was one of Egypt's most significant gods, a figure whose origins trace back over 6,000 years and whose festivals represented a blend of euphoric carnival celebrations, fertility events, and solemn religious rites. Picture the scene: grand processions winding through cities, bearing the statue of a god synonymous with virility, as priests carried large quantities of lettuce. Yes, lettuce? This vegetable was associated with life-giving properties. When cut, its white sap was reminiscent of vitality and regeneration. Foreign visitors chronicled their astonishment at the revelry they encountered, finding it challenging to put into words the displays they witnessed. Yet, what is truly remarkable is that these acts were not deemed inappropriate. They were serious religious matters, essential for ensuring vital floods alongside fruitful harvests. Min's iconography is unmistakable. His depictions consistently emphasize fertility and renewal, often painted black to signify the fertile soil of the Nile Valley. However, the implications of these representations go beyond mere artistic licenses. Temple statues of Min, some towering over 20 feet high, presented explicit displays of masculine vigor. The colossal statue of Min discovered in Coptos in 1894 was so overtly illustrative that the Victorian archaeologists who unearthed it attempted to cover it up. But fortunately, their efforts failed, allowing us today to appreciate how the ancient Egyptians expressed their reverence. The festival of Min, observed during the harvest season, dwarfs modern-day celebrations in its exuberance. Historical accounts reveal that the pharaoh himself led a grand procession bearing Min's statue through city streets where priests would walk alongside, brandishing vast quantities of lettuce not for consumption but as a symbolic offering of fertility. Women would line the route, performing gestures of reverence, dancing to honor the god in a ritualistic expression aimed at ensuring fertility. Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt in 450 BCE, was so astonished by the worship of Min that he stated, "What I witnessed in the temples of this god, I can barely bring myself to describe in detail, though I have no doubt of what mine eyes beheld." Similarly, Roman historians were equally taken aback, with Plutarch noting the open adoration displayed by women at Min's shrines in a manner that would make even the god Jupiter himself blush. Contrary to being perceived as shameful, these actions were indeed religious obligations, as women seeking to conceive demonstrated their devotion through rituals at Min's statues. Archaeological findings support these ancient accounts. In 1998, a team operating in the Luxor Temple uncovered a concealed chamber filled with dozens of small Min figurines, all exhibiting signs of ritual wear. Analysis confirmed the presence of ancient oils and offerings, substantiating their religious significance. This discovery felt like an ancient ritual chamber was resurrected, underscoring the importance of Min's worship over numerous epochs. Yet the fascinating aspect of Min's devotion extends beyond temple walls. Every home in ancient Egypt likely housed a Min shrine, often tucked away in private spaces. Amulets of Min were worn as jewelry among the people, with his symbols proudly displayed as tokens of faith. Even children wore charms bearing Min's likeness for protection and divine blessing. Imagine today's society embracing such fertility symbols for children. It would undoubtedly trigger controversy, the very opposite of their cultural acceptance in ancient Egypt. The Cairo Museum's vast collection boasts over 10,000 Min amulets, just a fraction of those that have survived. The public nature of Min worship astounded foreign visitors for centuries. French soldiers of Napoleon's expedition in 1798 observed rural Min festivals that left them speechless. One officer recounted witnessing the natives parade fertility symbols through their villages with such enthusiasm that our men are amazed by their openness. Conversely, British Victorian travelers found such sights distressing, leading campaigns to remove Min statues from public view, many of which found refuge in museum basements where they remain to this day. Recent archaeological revelations continue to illuminate Min's integral role in Egyptian culture. In 2019, a brewery near Abydos adorned with Min's symbols was discovered, indicating that beer brewed at the site contained herbs thought to enhance vitality. This wasn't mere symbolic representation, they were producing special beer expressly for men's festivals. The brewery's capacity suggested that entire communities engaged in celebrating fertility while venerating their deity. The cultural significance of men cannot be overstated. The hieroglyph that embodies virility is essentially derived from men's symbol, and the very concept of fertility is intertwined with the sacred qualities of his lettuce. Even architecture reflected reverence for men, with pillars symbolically designed to echo strength and doorways representing life's transitions. The obelisks that grace cities around the globe serve as monuments to regenerative power, though many modern tour guides neglect to mention this rich historical context. The economic ramifications of men worship shed light on its profound importance. Egypt's viability hinged on agricultural productivity and human reproduction, and men symbolized both. His festivals coincided strategically with planting and harvest cycles, and the rituals tied to his worship served practical purposes in the realm of fertility. Temple records indicate that birth rates noticeably increased approximately 9 months following significant men festivals, confirming that the gods upheld their promises through the very human processes of life. Engagements with fertility symbols today might incite controversy faster than one can invoke community guidelines. However, in ancient times, Egyptians paraded such icons through their streets as if they were the most natural expressions of faith. They grasped a reality that seems to have faded from modern understanding. Fertility and reproduction are the lifeblood of civilization's continuity. Yet, if you think that public displays of fertility worship were audacious, consider the striking practices of Egyptian royalty as they endeavored to keep their bloodlines pure, a practice that would be deemed incredibly taboo in modern contexts. With deities creating worlds and fertility figures celebrated so openly, the practice of marrying within the family began to appear as a natural extension of divine will. Indeed, Egyptian royal family traditions ventured beyond distant cousins. Pharaohs routinely espoused their sisters and occasionally even their daughters. This behavior was not incidental or hidden away, nor was it taboo among them. Rather, it was woven into the very fabric of their culture, reflecting the cross-section of divinity and humanity. Through this lens, the divine lineage was paramount, entrenching a societal framework where the intertwining of family and power took on a sacred resonance and ideology representing their belief system, in which lineage bore the stamp of divine favor. By analyzing these ancient practices and beliefs, we uncover a nuanced narrative that reveals the astonishing complexity and radical views of ancient Egyptian society on creation, fertility, and the sacredness of life itself. Unraveling this legacy sheds light not only on their civilization but also on our contemporary understanding of fertility, familial relations, and the interconnectedness of the divine with human existence. This is not merely history, these are vital reflections on the nature of humanity and the cycles of life that continue to resonate today. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to support our work and never miss an upload. Like this video, drop a comment, and share it with others to show your support and help us grow this historical community.